People of Reddit, what stupid rule at your work school backfired beautifully? Zero tolerance ended shortly after a bully got thrown through a window because if I'm getting suspended for defending myself I'm gonna make it worth my while. Back in 2014 our HR made a rule people couldn't go to other buildings. We had 3 buildings within a block of each other. All 3 had shipping areas and the warehouse employees had to go to each building to work. We were told to stay at one building. I mentioned we ship out of all 3 who is going to do the work. The genius said oh it'll be taken care of. Next day $500 K shipment didn't go out. The following day we have a meeting. Why didn't you ship this? 2 days ago we were told to stay in our building and someone would take care of it. The rule was quickly changed. Required every employee to use electronic time clocks to punch in out for work including lunch. Punching in late or leaving early would cause your pay to be docked and getting a discipline letter. Multiple people wanted to sabotage the clocks, cut the cords, etc. But wiser heads prevailed. Everyone arrived several minutes early and left late, every single day, to avoid getting into trouble. Unfortunately, this created an impeachable evidence of hours worked. The employer had to pay out thousands of dollars in overtime the first month. The clocks disappeared exactly 5 weeks after they were installed with no notification. Every shift, there's a quota we need to fulfill, and then, even if you do fulfill it, you have to keep working until your 8 hours are up. Cue everyone speeding for 4 hours, having a 3-hour lunch coffee break, then slowly moving their way for an hour. No rule about us taking necessary breaks if we're still capable of reaching the quota. Now we're allowed to stop once we're done. I worked at Starbucks for like 5+ years before and during undergrad, and at one point our district manager thought it was a good idea to implement a just say yes policy, where we literally weren't allowed to tell the customer no. Lasted for about 3 months, and in that 3 months our unaccounted product and waste went up over 300% because when the POS didn't have a way to punch in a customer request we had to just do it anyways. We also got complaints from stores in surrounding districts because they had angry customers who were requesting things that were against local food service code, and told them that we did it for them at our store. I knew exactly how that policy was going to play out and I just laughed every time management was freaking out about the problems it was causing. When COVID started our boss demanded that our entire team sit in on group Zoom calls, even if the topics on the agenda didn't have anything to do with their roles. She felt it would build team unity. Productivity dropped. Negative Google reviews came in. Staff became more stressed. When she demanded answers on the next Zoom call, one of my coworkers bluntly said, well, I would reply to this woman's voicemail, but I'm stuck on this Zoom call. The bottom floor of my secondary school was a square that had corridor all the way around. After some incident where a kid got knocked over, they implemented a one-way system. Unfortunately, they were very strict on enforcing it. If you accidentally walked past your class, you couldn't just turn around. They seemed very proud of their new rule, until everyone started showing up late for class because they had to do extra laps of the bottom floor. I am the one who lives closest to work, so if the building alarm goes off overnight, I'm first on the list to get the call from the alarm company. It used to be that if we had good reason to believe the alarm was not an actual break-in we could tell them not to summon the police and ignore the alarm. I can access the building cameras from home. The most common alarm was the cleaning crew who were always messing up the disarming. Then a sister site ignored an alarm that turned out to be an actual break-in, and the facilities director decided that no matter what, if there was an alarm we should have the alarm company summon the police, then go to the building, get the police all clear, and reset the alarm. This was a pain in the A but rare enough, and I lived literally 2 minutes away. Then we contracted for the alarm company to come in and replace all of our panels and sensors. It was a nightmare process that ultimately ended up taking months. And the whole time there were phantom alarms, sometimes multiple times a night. Each time I had to go out in the middle of the night, I'd prepare the required report, send it to the facilities director, and request to go back to the old process. Each time he said no, we couldn't afford to miss a potential real break-in. After about 3 weeks of this nonsense, I was due for some time off. I was going out of town, and the protocol for that was for me to ignore calls from the alarm company, so they moved to the next person on the list, which happened to be the facilities director. In the 5 days I was off, I must have ignored at least 4 overnight calls that all would have gone to him next. Then suddenly, nothing. When I got back I was informed that for the duration of the alarm update, we just weren't going to arm the building at all. So much for can't afford to risk a break-in. A place I used to work had a rule that executive level staff needed to be contactable when on leave, so they had a section on the leave form for the address of where you'd be staying and a contact number. Some knuckle shuffler in HR decided it applied to all staff and the shenanigans began. People would put down the address and phone number of sex shops, sports grounds, medical clinics. I gave the latitude and longitude of the place I was going camping and the UHF frequency channel my radio would be tuned to. My company used to be a small startup. In my first year I was the project manager and architect for a global system rollout. I put in my vacation days for Burning Man 6 months out, in February, and my PTO was approved. Then a few months later, June, my boss, who had been head of the IT department, got a new boss, new head of it. With a month to go until Burning Man, the new head of it told me that my project rollout was too important for me to be uncontactable at all and that I would need to take a satellite phone to Burning Man or my vacation would be cancelled. We were still 3 months from go live, but he decided that we were at a critical moment that I had to be available for. However, neither my boss or the new head of it wanted to carry out the daily $18 minute satellite phone calls with me, probably because they knew it was violating some labor law. So they got one of the guys in the London office to call me in the Black Rock Desert each day. I said I wouldn't take the calls before 1 PM, which was 9 PM for our man in London. Every day he called he had had a few beers, and didn't give a sh about project updates. He just wanted to know what parties I'd been to and what art I'd seen. Late 80s high school rule was no shorts. Classmate came for an exam with basketball shorts on that were below her knees. Teacher made her go home to change. She came back in a micro mini skirt and wrote her exam. My high school principal was known for sending girls home to change if their bra straps were showing. In my sophomore year he tried to send one of my classmates home, but she was like, "Nah, I've got a change of clothes. No need to send me home." So she went to the bathroom, took her bra off, and made a show of putting it in her locker. The principal was pissed, but couldn't do anything about it since she technically was following the dress code. It became a thing, like hundreds of high school girls removing their bra at school or just showing up braless as a big F you to the principal. Couldn't buy drinks at lunch with cash money, had to buy some voucher. They were just cheaply made laminated pieces of paper. This was 2001. I was 13 and scanned the vouchers and printed them out on paper that kinda matched the color of the vouchers, and laminated them myself. They were horrible made and not even the right color on the backside, also crudely cut out. I made about 100 of them, have passed them out after I tried paying with them for myself and encountered no problems. Made some new friends and upped production. Took them about 3 weeks to find out, but by then the fakes ones had intermingled with the real ones and had already been resold to students via the student office. About half of the vouchers sold were fakes. Drinks were cash only from then on. They had no choice to accept the fakes one for a little while longer though, as they had sold and charged for some of them. To make moving between classes more efficient, they had designated up and down stairways. But they didn't take into account that the stairs were located at the ends of the very long corridors, which meant it was impossible to get to your next class on time. Because of this, no one bothered trying to get to class on time and just blamed the stairway rule. I went to a strict Catholic school with uniforms. The kids in 4th 8th grade had to wear belts until we got a new principal who made it mandatory for all the kids in the school to wear belts. Many bathroom accidents from kindergartners, 1st and 2nd graders later, and complaints from parents. Of course, the principal rescinded her addition to the dress code. More recently, this principal was fired for embezzling money from the school. You can't speak a foreign language at work unless you're a certified translator in that language. We had a guy in a customer service position that spoke Spanish as a second language. Yeah, his regular Spanish speaking customers were confused as to why he could no longer speak to them in Spanish, because they knew he was fluent. Eventually Jay explains to them, in English, that they made it against the rules for him to speak Spanish. They weren't happy about that. Back in 2011, a company I worked for had the bright idea to block all social networks because, You know, employees should work instead of slacking off on Facebook. I could write volumes of books on the toxic culture in that place. But the owner-president, who lived in a different country and visited about once every few months, was universally feared by everyone, and a few days before his arrival the whole building went into panic mode. So a few weeks after the social network ban, His Royal Highness shows up, and 5 minutes later half of a department is scrambling to his office. Apparently there was an issue with the Wi-Fi, or at least that's what he figured since he couldn't log on to Facebook. It was fixed in seconds. A few years and 3 promotions later, I make a joke about it with him. Instead of a laugh, I get a confused look. Turns out he still thinks it was some internet problem, since whoever decided to ban social networks didn't have the balls to tell him about it after the incident. I was working as a medical assistant at a private practice medical clinic. Our clinic manager wouldn't allow the new receptionist to drive to the bank to deposit cash. Made her walk carrying the money bag so that she couldn't drive away with the money. Bizarre, I know. That went on for a few weeks. Then the receptionist was mugged and over $1,000 in cash was stolen. She was allowed to drive after that. My mother was an elementary school teacher. 4 years a teacher's be quiet signal was holding up one hand in a peace sign. Well, the principal decided that this didn't have enough meaning and invented her own. At a staff meeting she explained that her new sign stood for ears listening, eyes looking, lips locked. She then made an L with her index finger and thumb and held it in front of her forehead. This principal didn't take criticism well, so none of the staff members were willing to tell her that she was making the loser sign, and so the new sign was taught to the children. Most of them made fun of it. Some of the more sensitive ones got upset by it. Overall it was a disaster, and within a few weeks they went back to the peace sign. Not a stupid rule, but I think this should apply. I'm an aviation maintenance and wanted to leave the current company that I worked for 12 years with. During my interview at the new company, I was asked why I was thinking of leaving my current job, being that it was a good and reputable company. I said new management is all about efficiency and not the one thing aviation maintenance is all about, safety. Interviewer liked my interview and assured their company doesn't cut any corners in safety vs cost. I get the job. Fast forward 6 months or so, I'm the new guy, so I get the short end and have to work Christmas Eve. Should be a short day. Boss's plane is coming in from Cabo to drop off chartered passengers, fill up on fuel and take him and family to their vacation home in Aspen. Plane arrives, and as I'm doing my post-flight walk around, I see a big problem that forces me to ground the plane. Boss is clearly not happy. Attempts to force me to make an unapproved repair. I deny to do so and I'm sent home. Sweet. I didn't quit. It's documented and I get to go home earlier than planned on a holiday. Someone else gets called in to do the Mickey Mouse of a repair. Everyone's happy. Plane taxis out with owner and family. Full on fuel and tries to take off. Whoops. Crappy repair failed. Huge component breaks off and goes into the inlet of the jet engine. Grenades that engine. Plane's brakes overheat trying to stop the heavy A-plane with just one engine. Some fuselage is damaged from the engine that gave out and the plane finally comes to a stop. FAA comes in. Sweet. Who made this repair? Who accepted to take this flight? What company operates this way? So, dummy tech that tried to make the repair gets his license revoked. The boss owns the charter company, so he's fined a huge amount and is put on a probation with continuous FAA audits, and, best of all, the insurance rejected his claim to the engine because it was negligence. This cost him millions, and they couldn't fire me. I got to tell the story over and over and over with a big smile on my face.